This is a story I like to tell now and then, especially to my niece and nephews. Children love scary stories, so I thought I'd share it here and give people something to read. When I was much younger, 9 or 10 I think, must have been the 90s if I remember right, I used to love playing outside. Wind, rain or shine, I was out running around. Completely feral, my mum used to say. Even when my friends weren't around, I'd run off into the fields behind our estate and make what fun I could. Things were a lot more relaxed back then. Weird to think about how easily amused I was back then, yet now I can barely put my phone down for a couple of minutes before going, must be something I've not seen before. One rainy day, I'd gone knocking for my mates, and while I had a few takers, their mums weren't too happy with the idea of soaking wet children dragging all sorts of muck off the fields and across their floors. So I was riding solo. I made my way straight to the fields, crossing a creaky little bridge and looking for large sticks I could use on my bargain bin adventure. Before long, I had made it to my favourite place, a big field covered to the horizon with tall grass. No idea why the farmer kept it that way. I never saw any cows or sheep in there, but I wasn't complaining. There was a footpath which people used for hiking or dog walking, which led to a large woodland which bordered the field. I ran all the way along, the rain hammering down on my coat and rustling the grass all around me. I should say, the grass wasn't so tall that I couldn't see over it, but you could hide in it very easily. It was a nice place to watch the grass wave in the rain as I trudged my way through the muddy and puddle-ridden path. I remember reaching the edge of the field and looking into the forest. Unless I was with friends, I would always stand and stare past all of the trees, as if I was expecting to see someone or something lurking behind one, just waiting for me to walk close enough to grab. I knew the likelihood of seeing anything other than birds or squirrels was low, and even if someone was out there, it would be a local I would recognize, since our little village was so bloody inbred. Not literally, just a joke. There was a large old thick tree near the footpath I decided to take shelter under for a while. It had a nice view of the village and the surrounding fields. I sat for a time, looking for bugs or maybe a shiny stone I'd bring home and paint later. When I brought my head up from the dirt, I thought I saw something in the long grass. It was only for a second, like it had ducked down quickly. I don't think I was scared at that point, but it was enough to get my attention. Fortunately, the rain was letting up, at least for a while. I knew it would be back again, on and off like a leaky tap. So I headed back out of the woods and into the grass. I must have been daydreaming, as I don't remember the first part of my journey. Not until I realized how quiet it was. Until it wasn't. While occasionally stopping to splash in a puddle, I would hear rustling behind me. I must not have seen anything, as I kept walking, but I recall turning around several times on my way back. I remember feeling frightened that I was being followed. I remember feeling scared when crossing the small bridge. I heard a creak come from behind me shortly after I'd crossed myself. But it was when I was in the last field that I remember feeling truly terrified. The rustling was getting louder and more often, and I hadn't turned around in a while, hoping that it would just go away on its own. I must have hoped that it was just the wind or maybe a shy stray dog. It was so uncomfortably close, that rustling sound, that I turned as fast as I could. That's when I met his eyes. His face, or what I could see of it, burned into my memory. Dark and hungry eyes like a shark's, sallow, sickly-looking skin. Matted hair, I think. It could have been bald, and maybe I just saw the grass behind it. But that face was definitely there, watching me. His mouth was hanging open with more matted hair covering his jaw in a dishevelled beard, which gradually disappeared into the grass. I think he'd hoped I hadn't seen him and tried to hide better. He must have been very small, or maybe he was crawling, I thought. But whatever he was watching me, and I was watching him, and I saw the moment he realized. Ducking down and vanishing into the grass, I heard him charging towards me. I started running as fast as my little legs could carry me back to the exit gate of the field. Suddenly I felt a sharp pull on my leg and fell face first into the mud. I turned around and a pair of gaunt, dirty, pale arms were digging their long nails into my welly boot. I could feel them poking into my ankle through my boot, and the pull of the arm trying to drag me into the grass. I tried to stand but was slipping in the mud. I pulled as hard as I could to break free, that thing hissing at me through the grass. If it had sank those nails any further into my foot, I know that would have been the end of me. To my great fortune, I got my foot free of the boot and pushed on to the gate. I heard a rustle and what sounded like sudden squeaking of my lost boot. An angry, shrill cry then came from the grass. But it was too late. I was at the gate and out of there. I ran home and never looked back. When I got home, I was covered in mud, with one welly boot and one drenched sock. I tried to tell my parents what had happened, but they thought I was exaggerating. Can't say I blame them. Mum sent Dad to go look for my boot, and when he came back, it was in a sorry state, chewed up and torn. Must have been a badger, he said, trying to reassure me. I never stepped foot back into those fields again, not even after I told my friends about what happened, and they begged me to go on a monster hunt with them. I'd been lucky to get away once. I wasn't going to test my luck a second time. But whenever I saw those fields from my window or passing on my bike, I thought about him and whether he was watching me, the little man in the long grass. And that's where I tend to leave the story. I moved away from our old village shortly after graduating from uni, and my mum and dad left a few years ago. I had not been back to visit since they packed up. Felt a bit sad the idea of seeing the home I grew up in and knowing it was no longer in the family. However, I was passing through recently, and with nostalgia poking at me, I decided to stop by for a while. Walked around and saw some old sights, as well as some new ones, including a new estate they'd built onto one of the fields I used to play on. I smiled when I saw that, thinking how funny it was that that thing had one less place to hide in now. That smile quickly left me, however, as I turned to leave, and taped to a lamppost was a photo of a little boy, and the words above it, "Missing child, last seen in meadow, next to his house."